Every leader I work with eventually faces this.
He said, "Mommy, we need you back." And I resigned. I had nowhere to go.
Imposter syndrome just roaring through me.
This is a real conversation about what it costs to keep leading when you're stretched thin. The CEO of Yael Geffen, Sotheby's International Realty, the Chief of Payments and Partnerships at JUMO, and the former Chief Marketing Officer who led Kulula, British Airways, Hollard, and more.
Like every single time I had to come into the turnstiles, I felt like I had to switch myself off and switch something different on.
My former CEO had been charged with murder.
How I define my job is I say like red is good. Whatever is red, that is my job.
Sometimes we talk utter shit for 3/4 of the meeting. Finally, in the last 10 minutes, somebody would say, "Oh yeah, there's a culture thing going on here that I'm worried about." And the gem would come. You are not alone.
Stretched thin, still leading.
Being stretched doesn't mean that we stop leading.
Welcome to Leading Awake. I'm Gilan Gork. And if you're a senior leader right now, I think that you'll recognize this. You're in back-to-back meetings all day. You come home and sometimes you've got nothing left for the people who actually matter to you. You're making decisions that impact hundreds or maybe even thousands of people, and somewhere in the background, you catch yourself thinking, am I even the right person for this? You're holding it together on the outside, but on the inside, it feels like there are cracks that are starting to show. And you can't really talk about it because who do you talk to when you're the one that everyone else is leaning on? That is the territory that we're going into today in this fascinating discussion. If you're new to the show, my background is a bit unusual. I started out as a professional mentalist, working with the human mind on stages around the world. And that path eventually led me to the world of leadership, working with leaders and organizations across the globe on what it really takes to see clearly and respond wisely when under pressure. And that's what this show is about, the inner game of leadership, the stuff that's harder to talk about, but arguably the stuff that matters most. Today's conversation is called Stretched Thin, Still Leading. I sat down with 3 leaders who know this territory well. Yael Geffen is the CEO of Yael Geffen Sotheby's International Realty, one of South Africa's most recognized real estate brands. She's been open about navigating bipolar disorder while leading at the highest level, and what she shares in this conversation about the cost of that openness and what it gave her back is something that I think a lot of leaders need to hear. Brad Roper is the Chief of Payments and Partnerships at JUMO, leading live partnerships across the African continent. He's someone who defines his job by running towards whatever's on fire. And in this conversation, he talks honestly about the moment he realized that the people closest to him were getting what was left over. And we have with us Heidi Brouwer, who was the Chief Marketing Officer at Hollard for over a decade after leading brands like Kulula and British Airways in South Africa. Today, she's a consultant and facilitator of her own company, Heidi B & Co., and the distance from corporate, now that she's left corporate, has given her a lens on leadership that I think is truly valuable. Really, she tells a story in this episode that I won't forget. So we have 3 leaders with us, 3 very different worlds, and one conversation that most of them would never normally have in public. Welcome again to Leading Awake, and welcome to our guests. I've got a kind of a warm-up question that I will want to pose to each of you. And that is, what is one belief about leadership or culture that you've changed your mind about?
A couple of things come to mind. The first one was, I think I grew up with the belief that leaders had to have all these answers and that leaders were these omnipotent beings that were these oracle-like individuals. But given the fact that we live in the information age and even often the disinformation age, I think I've had to really smash that belief. And I really like this concept in a book that I read called The Geek Way, which is like the leader's job in a modern society is to actually farm for dissent, asking the right questions, legitimizing doubt, and then co-creating solutions. So I think that's probably the biggest mental model that I've had to break is, not being this person that provides answers, but rather creating a space, farming for dissent, and then co-creating, a journey towards a solution.
Love that. Yeah, who would like to jump in there?
I think what I've busted or changed, I think, is really my view has changed, because I was saying to Brad when we were just getting set up that I have been out of corporate for 18 months. It's just like a lens that's changed. Just by definition, you are in many situations the chief peanut, and no matter how much you try to be a part of or one of, you are not seen as that. And it's really hard for the other people, because you can only change how you show up. You can't change how other people show up. And I think I didn't realize how hard it was for them until I stepped out, and now I am a facilitator and enabler for other companies. I'm not anybody's boss, which is quite nice, quite refreshing actually. And I think I am seeing how you have to be so much more deliberate about finding ways of being inclusive, of creating dissent, as you said. It's harder than you think, because it's not only about changing you, it's about it's the lens that other people are seeing it through. It's not so easy.
I can't wait, like we spoke about yesterday, just to have an episode of Leadership Answered with people who are no longer in corporate after long, illustrious corporate careers, and just like looking back. So yeah, it's really great to have your perspective through that lens as well now. Yael, how about you?
So a couple things come to mind. I think that a leader, instead of using the word boss or manager, a leader should be seen as a coach rather than a boss or a manager. And that kind of takes the sting out of this hierarchy and superiority. Traditionally, I always, when I was growing up and watching the world, and, it was the era of Mad Men kind of thing where leaders, were loud and they were out there. And I really value servant leadership. And I think listening most of the time and speaking some of the time has been an important learning for me. And that a good leader who encourages trust and transparency amongst his or her team has the power of really being able to listen and understand.
Yeah, fantastic. We often talk about leadership in terms of vision, strategy, performance, all that visible stuff. But, what's less visible and arguably even more important is actually how leaders keep showing up, even when the pressure doesn't let up, when people are feeling stretched, tired, doubting themselves. And so that's really the space that we want to explore today. So Yael, I've had the privilege of hearing you speak, and you've been open about navigating things like bipolar disorder, while still leading at the highest level. When the emotional load gets heavy, how do you decide what to reveal, what to contain, how to just continue leading from that place of integrity?
So I had a terrible experience when I was working in Los Angeles. I was at an advertising agency and I had a relapse, and I communicated to them. I wasn't going to, because of the shame that I was carrying, and I landed up getting let go a month later. Like, if I look back, I think, I could have taken them to the cleaners, but it just is what it is. I never ever want to be in a culture or create a culture that has that kind of fear to it, because I was a damn good employee. And I even won the Academy Awards pitch for the 80th Academy Awards. And this was like a month before. And I was very scared when I got into this leadership position of being CEO at Yael Geffen Sotheby's International Realty. I certainly didn't volunteer that information. And someone said to me, her name's Glenda Thompson, this is actually such a strength of who you are. Open yourself up, because there are other people that are navigating this. And imagine you can inspire other leaders to come forward, because people naturally think that as a leader, you don't have bipolar. So I actually did, I want to say, come out in the public eye about it. And I was terrified. And instead of the world turning me away, it encompassed me and embraced me with a warm hug instead. And that was really, really powerful. And I think that the more authenticity and transparency you create with your team and your staff and your network, it allows everyone else to show up as well. And when you have psychological safety and you create psychological safety, there's someone in my team who has very severe bipolar, severe, severe, severe. And I can understand him because of what I've gone through. And he is a high functioning, highly productive person. But if he is having a bad time, we all kind of huddle around him and take over. And it allows everyone to kind of step in for you when you can't show up fully. So it's about navigating that and creating such a strong team and environment around you. So if I am having an off day, my team naturally is like, we got you, Yael. We got you. And I think that's what leadership is about.
And Brad, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. Just, knowing your experience and what you shared with your team as well and creating that open, safe environment. What are your thoughts?
Reading Brene Brown's book, Daring Greatly, just had a fundamental shift on me and my thoughts around leadership. I read it at the time that I was given my first job as CEO, which was in my late 20s. My first job of CEO was to lead a team of over 2,500 people concentrated in one building. And I had to put two excos together and merge them. So you can imagine this like 20-something-year-old kid walking into the turnstiles. Like every single time I had to come into the turnstiles, I felt like I had to switch myself off and switch something different on. I mean, to have 2,500 pairs of eyes on me was like intense pressure. So imposter syndrome just roaring through me. And I felt like I had to put on this like mask of perfection all of the time. And it was super draining for me. So for me, like learning that, firstly, I was not feeling psychologically safe, but then I also, to your point, Yael, I didn't want to I didn't want anyone else to feel that way other than me. I start every single meeting inviting everyone to check in. It's a head, heart, and health check-in. So what's going on cognitively in your head? Like, let's not get into the stuff on work, just like cognitively, how many tabs do you have open? Heart, like how you feeling emotionally, is anything, troubling you or straining you? And then health, there's the physical health component, but also like mental health, like what's going on with you. And so I usually will check in first and like being vulnerable, I feel like I don't have everything together right now. I've got way too many tabs open. Like it's stressing. My partner's not happy with me. My family's starting to, like, people really like vulnerability gives my team the permission to show up as well. And then it's immediate, like everyone starts crowding. If you're having a little bit of a weak moment, people will crowd in and try and help, like, drive you through that. So yeah, thanks for creating that space, for us to have this conversation.
Yeah, obviously I work with a lot of execs and in excos, and when I ask the question in workshops, who's ever experienced it, 99% of hands go up, which I totally relate to as well. When I presented for NATO, I was the opening keynote speaker for NATO at their Stratcom conference in Europe. And I just had absolute imposter syndrome. Like really just thought to myself, what am I even doing here? I was petrified, absolutely petrified. So I totally relate to it.
I wanted to share, I also had such severe imposter syndrome when I took over. I mean, my former CEO had been charged with murder, and then I land up taking over. I'm the chairman's daughter, which is nepotism. People love nepotism. I'm the youngest CEO. I'm the only female woman CEO in real estate. I'm a single mom with a child. So I decided to lean into masculinity and I started wearing ties. And I looked like such a schmuck after wearing the 5th or 6th tie. I was like, what are you doing? You're feminine. You're leaning away. For me, it was about changing those filters with foundations. It's like resourcing yourself, getting a mentor, focusing on actually building you up from the inside rather than building yourself up from the outside. And I call imposter syndrome something else. I call it a crisis of confidence. And the acronym is so suitably there. It's COC. It's a cock. Because people are like, oh, I'm having such a cock today. And obviously it's a crisis of confidence. But when you can name it and make fun of it, it's quite fun.
I've got a degree in nursing. Nursing took me on this little path of small shifts until I ended up being the CMO of an airline, the CMO of a big insurance company. So there I rock up to the insurance company full of actuaries, engineers, and accountants. I'm not one of any of those. I had consulted to them for a year before we got married, before I joined them full time. And at my first exco, it was a big exco then, it was about 14 people. At the end of it, one of the guys who I'm still close with to this day, he's about 7 foot tall. He looked down at me, not on me, at me. And he said, Heidi, you're so different from us. Promise me you'll never change and be like us. We need you to be different. He gave me in that moment, I looked at him like this, the biggest gift of this permission and the consciousness of the value I bring by being who I am and with the gifts that I bring, which are different to the gifts everybody else brings. You know, the first thing I did when I joined Hollard was download an app called the Actuarial Glossary. I used to sit in meetings in that glossary trying to find which 3-letter acronym the people were using, but they made up new ones on the spot. I turned to the left of me, turned to the right, at whichever actuary was closest and said, what's that? Because I couldn't find it. They made them up. So I knew like that I was never going to be them. And I slowly learned that I got here because of who I am. And I think we have to keep remembering that when we're having crises of confidence. You know, the door may have been opened for you, Yael, more easily than other doors for people, but you walked through it yourself. I think actually the fact that 99.9% of conscious humans have imposter syndrome makes sense because we are perfectly imperfect and we are, and we have some humility, thank God. But it's always for me about being conscious of the gifts that you bring and the role that you play. And I spent 11 years negotiating actuaries, accountants, and engineers, and I got the CEO's award. So that I spent 11 years still not knowing all the acronyms. I had resigned, I had decided to move on, and I was acknowledged. And I think it's just important that your lens on you is not the same as other people's lenses on you, is that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And you are one of the parts with all your gifts, and we need them all. You know, and it doesn't mean you wake up every morning going, I'm a gift, I'm a gift. Oh no, it doesn't work like that. Some days you don't feel like the gift, you feel like the crumpled wrapping paper. But you just got to keep remembering someone like Pierre is thinking about you like, wow, I need a her or a him. And I'll tell you a little story. You see, Killa knows I've got stories. I had been at Comair for 4 years. How blessed was I? I had Kulula, British Airways, slow lounges, empty beds, daddy's deals, 24/7. I had glorious brands to look after. I had a lovely team. I had fabulous agencies, King James, Atmosphere, like the best. I loved it. My CEO left. I was left with the other CEO, good guy, but the whole dynamic of the corporate changed completely. One Friday evening after supper, I was in my bathroom, standing by the mirror. I don't know what I was doing there, actually. And my then 19-year-old son, Kim, stood behind me. So I could see him and me in the mirror. I couldn't move. And he said these words to me. He said, Mommy, we need you back. And he didn't mean we need you back to Yael knows my family, to bake scones and like have babies and barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. He meant they know how I resonate when I'm happy and buzzing with my corporate and he knew I wasn't. He said, if we have to eat peanut butter sandwiches because you need to go and visit a yogi on top of a mountain and find your thing, that's okay. And then he left me with that thought, and I cried myself in a bubble bath with music, like a boy had broken up with me, that feeling. And then I knew he was right. I'd lost my bubbles, actually. Something had changed, and I wasn't me. And I gave myself 6 weeks till the 18th of the month, because numerologically 18, the Jewish people's high is life. And by that day, every day I got closer to that day, I felt like the universe had lifted off my shoulders, and I knew it was the right choice. And I resigned. I had nowhere to go. And I had kids in private school and university. So that's for me how strong I feel, how strongly I can feel, and the people around me can feel when I'm in the right place and when I'm not me in the right place.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. If you're listening to this and recognizing some of what these leaders are describing, that pull between wanting to show up fully and feeling like there just isn't enough of you to go around, I think it's worth knowing that this isn't a personality thing. It really is a pattern, and it's something that you can actually work with. When pressure builds, your perception narrows. And that's not some kind of flaw that we have. It really is just what pressure does to us. You start operating from a smaller version of yourself. You may get faster, but less clear, more reactive and less responsive. And the people around you feel it too, even when you think that you're hiding it well. The Peak Practice Program is something that I built for exactly this. It's a 14-day guided audio practice designed for senior leaders, and its whole purpose is to help you to expand your perception and your bandwidth under pressure so that you see more of what's actually happening, so that you can think more clearly and lead from a wider, grounded presence. It takes just 10 to 15 minutes a day, and the leaders who've been through it consistently say that the shift shows up not just in the big moments, but in the everyday ones too, helping them to become more effective leaders as a whole. If that sounds interesting to you, head to peakawake.com. But for now, let's get back to the conversation. Love to just take something, kind of a thread from there. We were talking about things like values as well, and just always being in alignment with our values. And so, we're talking about being stretched thin, still leading. And so, sometimes, especially when the pressure is on and we're working in environments where one really needs to be delivering results all the time, and there's lots of scale and speed and all of that kind of stuff. I'd love to know, was there a time where perhaps you felt stretched so thin, or maybe the people around you were stretched so thin and putting pressure on you that you almost risked drifting from your leadership values, and how did you course correct?
In my current job, I've got more than a dozen live partnerships across the continent. And how I define my job is I say, like, red is good. Whatever is red, that is my job. So whichever country manager is having reds, I hop on a plane, and it is my job to dive head first into that crisis and get it to green or amber, and then leave, and then, the people can, thrive. 1 December, so I'm coming down the stairs, and I've just come off a big red call, and I'm like, everything's going to be fine. We've done a head, heart, health. I've got you. I'm flying on a plane. And I get downstairs, and it's dinner time, and I'm just like, and my partner says to me, I know that things are really intense for you, but I'm actually done getting scraps. And my mom, that week, she was busy with a big renovation, and things had gone awry. And I have the Saturday time with her, and she explained to me like how bad things had gotten. I said, why didn't you call me? And she says, because you're not playable. Like, right now, you're not playable. And I was just like, hold up. Am I reserving the best bits for these crises and defining myself as this martyr leader that red is good, and I'm giving scraps to the people that love and need me the most? And that's where I've had to redefine myself as well. And I have to also create space to sharpen the saw. I have to reserve the best bits of myself for the people that matter the most. And then it actually becomes this virtuous cycle because then I get more energy and I can dive headfirst into like more reds.
I spent years, every corporate I ever went to was out of their boom phase and out of the heydays. had no budgets and no margins. Everybody's got ADHD with technology, and everyone's trying to do what everyone else is doing. And yesterday we were talking about keeping the main thing. And I think that's it. Is that if you and your team know what the main thing is, both in terms of how you show up and what you're trying to do, you set everybody free. My previous CEO used to talk about railway tracks, or rail tracks, used to say. You need rail tracks, and you do. If you have rail tracks, then you know, as a marketer and a brand mama, I have to make sure that my agencies know what the main thing is. Every time we get like, the winds come and now and Google's changed their algorithm, or suddenly the budgets are slashed because we've had to pay so much in COVID claims that we really don't have any money left. We can just pull back to what's the main thing. What are we trying to do? And then everyone's lined up behind that main thing, not behind me, behind that thing, that we are united in our purpose, and we focused. And it is so powerful, not empowering, powerful in terms of energizing everybody.
Also, I'm riddled. I'm riddled with anxiety. I don't go to gym to do anything other than just burn off whatever anxiety is like coursing through my veins. I just burn that right off in the morning, and then I can be fully present through the day. I do lots of like mindfulness work, like lots of little micro breaks in the day. If I've come off for like a high intense like meeting, I literally will take 30 minutes, drink a cup of tea, reset, reboot, because I can't be dragging that energy into like the next big event that I need to show up. Hugely big on like, Stephen Covey sharpen the saw. Like, how can I get out in nature? Like, how can I be up on a mountain or close to the water? When I'm up on a mountain, it reminds me like I feel closest to my higher power. And when I'm down at the ocean, I'm reminded of my insignificance. Like if I go in the ocean, I'm at my weakest point. Like I can't swim faster than a shark that I'm scared of. And so I have to put myself into these like nature-based spaces where I'm reminded of my insignificance, and that like really just re-energizes me.
And I'm really passionate about mindfulness. I think that a lot of people don't know how to really practically use it when, it's all good when you're on the cushion, so to speak, and practicing with your eyes closed at home. And when you're in real work environments, how do you actually bring that in? Yael, how about you? What are your thoughts around this?
The person that was getting the scraps was me. So in my situation, I was giving everything to work, everything to my child, everything to this, everything to that. And I was left with the scraps. And I could see in his eyes as well that I wasn't reserving any kind of self-love for me. And I've had to be extremely, extremely disciplined with self-care because I'm fantastic in chaos. Oh, I am the calmest person in chaos. Call it my brilliant burden, because it gives me a certain brilliance, and at the same time, it burdens me at its down points. While companies were backpedaling, we were ahead. And it was a very hectic time because during COVID, we have real estate agents, property professionals who didn't not just get a decrease in salary. Their job is completely risk. It's commission-based. And now the deeds office is closed. They had no chance to earn any income, right? Now, face 500 people like this who are absolutely having meltdowns. And I was so calm and clear-headed. And in those situations, you don't give up, you give more. And then I have my nervous breakdown afterwards when everyone's fine. When everyone's fine, that's the time for me to go and have my little meltdown. But as a result of seeing how much I give to each and every person and the least to myself, and how that affects me mentally, spiritually, physically, all of it, I've learned to be very disciplined. And I now force myself to go to gym in the morning because I'm also have anxiety when I wake up. It's an hour for myself where I turn off my phone. I'm not accessible to my son, my work. The world could end, but I am weight training and it's just me. And then I get my ritual coffee and small little things every few weeks, even if it's a little trip into the bush, getting out into nature. Those walk and talk meetings are unbelievable. I actually do a lot of them with my staff. I'll say, come meet me at the park and we'll walk. And at first they were like, this is a bit crazy. We're walking and then we're talking and we are coming up with such creative ideas. If I'm having a manic episode, sleep is non-existent for me. I have to take a sleeping pill. I have to, resort to forcing myself to sleep. So it's required a lot of discipline on my part.
We had a restructure at Hollard. CEO number 2 came in and shrunk the exco from 15 to 5. I was not on his exco. So after my absolute shattered ego, self-esteem, humiliation, when I picked myself up off the floor and realized that now there was the chief risk officer in an insurance company, now there was the chief actuary, it wasn't about me. After I did that, and also then learned that actually it made no difference to anybody else. They still saw me as a leader. The thing I had to do was I still had to connect with those people that I used to see every week, but I wasn't seeing them now. So I pinged them all and I said, I'm going to make a meeting with you because I need to still stay connected with you. You know that I saw all of them, a dozen of them, my poor PA had to make these meetings, a dozen of them or so every single month for an hour. No one ever canceled me. Sometimes they moved it. Sometimes they shrunk it. I know there are meetings for which one should have an agenda. But what in my head, agendaless meetings are those meetings where you just connect with people and you have it regularly in your calendars and you explain the reason for it is because I want us to talk about what's keeping us up at night. I want to understand the business of your business because then I'm aware of you and your things when I'm talking to the next guy and the next guy so that I can help put things together and be conscious of you and be in service. Sometimes we talk utter shit for 3/4 of the meeting, your holiday or your kids or your dog or your whatever. And finally, in the last 10 minutes, somebody would say, oh yeah, there's a culture thing going on here that I'm worried about. And the gem would come because people do business with people, not companies. And we don't spend enough time talking to each other. It's like, what's the agenda for this meeting? And we leave. We're not connecting. And so my thing, and even when your time is thin, your resources are thin, your wherewithal, have agendaless meetings and connect.
Yeah.
Understand people and where they're at, because that's how you will be in service.
There is literally just a very quick, rapid fire, 20-second answer each, just as we wrap up. What is one thing, it could be a habit, a mindset, a strategy that's most improved your leadership effectiveness ever? And what is that one thing you would recommend to any other leaders?
Being stretched doesn't mean that we stop leading. It means that we start leading differently with greater purpose, greater humility, and more intentional self-renewal.
The brilliant Adam Morgan, who wrote the original book on challenger brands and subsequently a few others, he says that really constraints literally can be beautiful, that you don't have to see constraints as limiting things. Instead of approaching things with a can't because language, use Adam's language of can if, and it shifts the lens on everything.
It's okay to not be okay. for you and your teams and having those vulnerable, courageous conversations. And the biggest one for me is you are not alone. And only when I had my crisis of confidence and I decided, you know what, I deserve to be here. So let me surround myself with an army of people who believe in me, who can empower me. So resource yourself, replace those filters with foundations. There are so many people that can be by your side to empower you that it's not just you. So you are not alone.
What I keep coming back to from this conversation is something that none of them said directly, but all three of them showed. The moments where you feel most stretched are often the moments where something important is trying to get your attention. Heidi's son saw it before she did. Brad's partner called it out before he could. And Yael turned her hardest experience into the thing that made her leadership real. I think that there's something in that for all of us, that being stretched thin isn't just a problem to solve. It can be a signal if you're willing to listen to it. Now, one of the things I'm trying to build with this show is a space where leaders can actually talk to each other about this stuff, not just to listen to the episode, but to connect. So if something from this conversation stuck with you, I'd really love to hear it. Drop a comment and let me know what hit home for you. Was there a moment where you thought, that's exactly what I'm going through right now? Or maybe there's a topic that you want us to go deeper on in a future episode, or a question that you would want for us to put to a guest. And while you're in the comments, take a look at what other listeners are saying too, and reply to another leader. Share your own experience, because I think one of the most powerful things about this show and the potential here is realizing that you're not the only leader dealing with this stuff. And the comment section is a place where that kind of conversation and connection can actually happen. My team and I are always working to make the show better, so your input really does shape what comes next. And if you could follow the show and leave a rating wherever you're listening, that would really help more people to find these conversations, not just to their benefit, but to the benefit of everyone who they are leading as well. And if you're curious about my Peak Practice program, head to peakawake.com. Remember, it's a 14-day guided audio practice designed specifically for leaders. It takes just 10 to 15 minutes a day. And if what these leaders in today's conversation described about staying grounded under pressure resonates with where you are right now, I think that the Peak Practice program would be one of the most useful things you do this year as a leader. So thank you for listening to Leading Awake.
Thank you.
I'll see you in the next one.